In January 1999, we were still feeling the effects of a jam-packed 1998. Titanic was everywhere, Britney Spears made her debut, and TRL was introduced. Pop culture has never been the same. So pop open a bottle of Surge soda, and dust off your Furbies and Tamagotchi because it's time to see what we were renting in January 1999. To find out this information, we're looking at this January 1999 issue of GamePro magazine, who got the stats straight from Blockbuster itself. Let's talk about Zelda: Ocarina of Time. This issue of Nintendo Power says, the story begins with an amateurish Link being the only Kokiri child without a fairy. When his fairy finally arrives, she reveals his destiny to save all of Hyrule. Of course, throughout the game, Link grows up and various adventures ensue. It came out a few years after Mario 64, so the 3D looks a lot better and the camera controls have definitely improved. I love Mario 64, but this is a huge improvement. Besides being ported to the GameCube in 2002, the game was also ported to the iQ player in 2003. What, you don't remember China's iQ player? The weird plug-and-play version of the N64? Maybe I should save that for another video. Anyway, after capturing some footage for this video, it made me interested to possibly stream this someday. I mean, I streamed and completed both Castlevania N64 games, so I'm sure this would be a much more pleasant experience. A lot of Castlevania 64 had horrible camera angles, so it would be nice to do a playthrough of something with a decent camera. It's no surprise that this was a popular rental at the time, since the game was a huge success. But it's not the best game to rent. This is one you'd want to own. But I mean, I guess you could keep renting it and just have your save file on a memory card, but that seems like a big hassle. Anyway, this game is talked about to death. If I do end up having more to say about it, we'll see if I stream it someday. Many also regard this as the best Zelda game. Do you? Star Wars Rogue Squadron is an arcade-style flying game that's awesome because it's just straight-up original Star Wars. You're playing as Luke Skywalker flying around your X-Wing, not having to worry about the horrors that come later. This was the first game in the Rogue Squadron series, with the other two later being released for the GameCube. But besides flying an X-Wing, you can fly other ships too throughout the game, and there's even a 1969 Buick Electra to unlock. What more could you want? Different ships are better suited for different missions, but the default is usually the X-Wing. In volume 115 of Nintendo Power, there's a pretty cool article that has a profile on each ship. Basically, the whole game comes down to the radar system. See the little red things on there? Shoot those because they're the targets. It's simple and it works. Each mission begins with information about what you're supposed to do, so there's no flying around aimlessly.
It was carrying a team of rebel soldiers and stolen Imperial equipment. You must find them before the Imperials do.
You'll want to use the Z trigger a lot because this allows you to slow down, or else you're going to be going way too fast to shoot anything. This was my problem the first few times I played this because I had no idea what I was doing. So I was flying around like crazy and not hitting anything. If you press A, that makes you go faster. One of the goals of the game is to get a gold medal on each mission. So basically, you'll find yourself replaying the missions again and again until you get the gold medal. What's cool is that it tells you your stats at the end of each level so you can see exactly where you need to improve. Most of the game is blowing up TIE fighters, escorting a ship, or protecting the rebels from the Empire. The part that stands out to me the most in this game is when you can take down Imperial walkers with your harpoon just like in Empire Strikes Back. Yeah, this game is awesome. Now it's time to talk about Space Station Silicon Valley. I've always been curious about this game, but never gave it a chance until now. I love that it starts out in the year 2001, because when this game came out in 1998, 2001 wasn't that far into the future. I appreciate the game maker's optimistic look into the future though. In the year 2001, the space station Silicon Valley is launched and it is packed full of robotic animals. But it quickly disappears until 1,000 years later when characters Dan Danger and a robot named Evo go looking for it. They eventually crash into the space station while Dan Danger is passed out and Evo gets blown to pieces, leaving behind only a microchip version of himself which looks a little like a bug. You play as Evo, who takes control of various robotic animals who each have their own little abilities. Volume 97 of Nintendo Power describes the setting as follows. Imagine Jurassic Park, only instead of a sanctuary for dinosaurs, there's a space station stuffed with berserk robotic animals that can transform into different and sometimes armed vehicles. Sounds pretty cool, right? For the first 2 stages, you start out as a dog and you need to herd up robotic sheep by either barking at them or killing one, and then taking control of it. I say kill, but it's a robot, so I guess I should say deactivate. Anyway, you can also control an electric fence, and now a mouse on wheels is involved. On the 3rd stage, titled Honeymoon Lagoon, you're now the mouse on wheels, and you first need to disable an electric fence, which is easy enough. You notice some robotic foxes scampering about, but it's no use to try and fight them because they will end up killing you instantly. But it turns out that if you take control over this, springy guy, you can tackle these evil foxes in no time. But from what I could tell, you don't even really need to bother with the foxes because you can just turn back into a sheep and hover float over to the exit anyway. And finally, on level 4 is where I almost lost my damn mind trying to deal with the camera angles and making my mouse on wheels go up a series of hills. You have to start by flinging yourself off a ramp, which would be pretty easy if you could center the camera. But because you can't do that, I had a real hard time making this jump. Yeah, you can use the Z button to look around, but it won't lock on. Anyway, I finally did it after a good number of attempts, but man did this piss me off. I really wanted to like this game. I love the wacky scenario and its overall vibe, but since I was having a real hard time with the camera, it made the gameplay not all that fun. A lot of people like this game though, so try it for yourself and see what you think. I know that the first thing anyone thinks of when they hear the words Buck Bumble is the insane theme song. But besides the theme song, is there much more to be said about the game? Well, let's talk about it. The game takes place in the far-off year of 2010, and all hell has broken loose in the insect kingdom. A chemical spill caused some bugs to have gnarly genetic mutations, which has turned them evil. The game manual literally says that the mutated bugs have developed offensive weaponry and fortress-like defenses. This game has an insane plot, I'll give it that. So basically, the good bugs are trying to save their species from the mutant herd, and have turned to none other than cyborg Buck Bumble to save the day. As far as gameplay goes, you fly around the different levels trying to kill all the enemy bugs while not getting hit yourself. You spend most of the time blowing up mutated dragonflies and crazy looking snails while trying to find your next target. When you do blow up an enemy bug and they start to crash, they sound like a full-on plane is going down, like you're in Top Gun or something. Also, when you blow up the snails, their green blood gets splattered everywhere, so that's pretty gnarly. You can also switch between weapons and do a fun little flip that reminds me of the move you can do in Sky Kid on NES. Now, most of what you'll be doing in this game is flying around aimlessly trying to find what enemies are left to kill. And unless you've played this a bunch before and know exactly where everything is, this gets old really fast. There's a terrible radar system at the top of the screen that looks like a spinning compact disc. It's supposed to help show you where enemies are by glowing a bit, but this doesn't happen until they are already super close by. I guess it's better than nothing, but it's a pretty sorry excuse for a radar system. The draw distance is also really short, so there's fog right in front of your stupid bee face since the N64 wasn't powerful enough to process the whole level. This is prevalent in other Nintendo 64 games as well, but it's really bad in this one. The game is almost good, I'd say, but the controls just aren't there. It needs a lock-on system or something because it is really hard to target enemies and grab items. It makes everything a lot harder than it needs to be. There should also be more health around the stages. That pissed me off too. But my main annoyance with this game is that there is no direction of where to go next. For example, let's go back to Rogue Squadron for a minute. It's the perfect example of how to do things right. While playing the game, it directs you on the map of what you need to do next. Here, you're just wandering around aimlessly trying to find enemies left to kill since it doesn't guide you whatsoever. So all in all, if you like this game, great. But I found it super annoying. And of course, this was a top rental back in 1998. There was probably nothing else left on the shelf, so it was Buck Bumble or nothing. As a launch title for the Super Nintendo, the first F-Zero quickly became a success, so naturally people were super hyped to play the follow-up, F-Zero X, for the N64. In Nintendo Power issue 112, there's a whole spread about the game, and they say that the F-Zero experience was made for 3D. But until the N64 was available, there was no way to create the sensation fully. Now, I think the SNES version looks pretty damn cool to this day, but let's see how its successor measures up. As you probably already know, F-Zero is a racing game where you compete in events to try and come in first place overall. There are 24 different courses and up to 4 players can play at a time. In the N64 version, they bring back racers from the original like Captain Falcon and Samurai Goro, but there are new racers you can unlock. A lot of the original tracks were remade for this game too. They've definitely made the tracks more complex than its old Super Nintendo counterpart. Now, instead of flat race tracks, the cars sometimes race on upside down tracks that make it almost like going down a tube slide at a water park. Sometimes while riding on tubes, it can be hard to tell which side of the tube is right side up. But I found that by looking at the backgrounds, you can keep yourself level by making sure the background buildings are level. In the SNES version of the game, you got 1 boost per lap. In this, they changed it so your boost gets taken from your energy meter. Because of this, you can do the boost a bunch per lap if you want. Unlike the SNES game, you can do little attack maneuvers here like sideswipe into other cars. And if you do this enough, you can take the other player out of the race. You can also do a cool little spin attack that's pretty fun. All of these tricks are super cool, but they aren't all that easy to pull off. Big Blue 2 can be a tough track to race because some parts don't have any sides, so you can just fly off at any point if you're not careful. And of course, you gotta mention the music when talking about F-Zero games. The music here is great, and you'll definitely want to have the volume turned up while playing. I'd say F-Zero X is a bit harder to get the hang of than the original game, but it's definitely worth checking out. So there you have it, 5 of the most rented N64 games at Blockbuster Video from January 1999. Did you rent any of these back then? What other systems would you like to know the rental stats on? Let me know in the comments, and thank you so much for watching.